welcome to how to build and maintain the trust trifecta for your online marketplace webinar. I can see that people are still dropping in, so I'm going to give people 1 minute to just sign up or come in to the webinar, and then we're going to get started. So I hope you're okay with that. And while we wait for people to come in, I'm just gonna go through some housekeeping rules. But first of all, I'm gonna start a poll. We have a poll that we will run now. You can fill it out while I'm talking and while we're introducing ourselves and while people come in. And then we're gonna share the results of that poll a little bit later in the webinar. Super excited to have all of you guys here. And I'm gonna launch the poll now. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. Cool. So Tom. Tom is my co-speaker, and I already spilled the bean that he's from ShieldPay, but do you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. I'm Tom. I'm one of the founding team over at ShieldPay, and we provide a new type of method that's built specifically for classified sites and marketplaces to help you build a trusted payments network within your platform.
Thank you. And I'm Sigrid, as you may have guessed. And I'm the global marketing manager here at Bezedo. Worked with Bezedo for 6 years now in various different roles, and all of them kind of aim towards helping companies with content moderation challenges, particularly building trust and engagement, etc. So let's just move on quickly. I'll see if I can get the slides working. There we go. Here's first a couple of quick numbers on trust that I want to share, just to help you guys understand where we are at the moment with trust. We did at Bezedo a survey where we were asking people why they would not take a desired action on a marketplace. We presented them with 6 pictures, and we asked them whether they would buy, whether they would recommend that site, or whether they would site on the sellers. And whenever they said no, we're not going to take that desired action, we also asked them why they would not. And 57% of those said that they didn't want to do it because they were not trusting the site or the user behind the ad. Another interesting stat is that Ipsos did a survey on why people who don't shop online don't shop online. And 50% of those said that that's because of lack of trust. So they are worried about their personal data, but they're also worried about the other user and whether or not they will actually receive the products that they are trying to buy. And finally, and this is just a little bit to be a little bit forward-looking, Pew Research Center did an industry survey around some of the biggest tech companies, and they found that 24% of what you call thinkers, big thinkers and influencers don't think believe that trust will diminish in the next 10 years. So all of this is kind of to say that yes, we have started to try and solve the trust problem, but there's still a long way to go. And then we just want to quickly give you a framework for trust. And for this, we have looked to Rachel Botsman. I don't know if you guys know her. She's have written a lot about the trust economy. And if you haven't checked out her TED Talks and her writings, I sincerely think that you should. She's super, super interesting. And one of the things she talks about is that trust there's something called a trust stack. And the first part of the trust stack is trust in the idea. And here she's talking about how when you come with a new concept or a new type of service, something that hasn't existed before, you first have to get people to believe in the actual idea, which means that take Airbnb, for instance. 10 years ago, if you told someone that, oh, you can rent out your apartment to strangers and earn something from, and it's going to be completely safe, people would not have believed you. And in fact, there's an interview with Rachel where she says that she had the opportunity to invest in Airbnb at a very early stage, and her boyfriend was like, no, don't do that. That's crazy. This is never going to go anywhere. And she's obviously a little bit sad about that at this point. But anyways, you guys, or most of the people in the online marketplace industry, don't really have to do too much here unless you are coming up with a completely new idea, because there has been some forerunners with Airbnb, Uber, some of the big marketplaces like eBay and Craigslist. Although Craigslist might not be a good a good example of trust, but still, you know, people understand that you can buy things online and it's relatively safe, right? And then the second thing she talks about in the trust stack is trust in the platform. And here she's talking about branding mainly. You know, do people come to your site and say, okay, this is a platform where I believe I'll be safe to transact with strangers? Do I believe that this company will back me up if I have a bad experience, etc.? So that's another place where you hopefully already have started building trust, but where it's really, really important to look as well. And then finally, and this is where we are kind of own in and focused today, is trust in the user. And here it's drilled down into the kind of interpersonal interactions. Do you actually trust, if I was trying to trade with Tom, do I trust that he's going to send me the item he promised? I don't really know, Tom. Does he trust that I will actually pay him? Will I receive the item that looks like what it actually did in the pictures, etc.? So here we are, and that's what we're kind of gonna own in on to today and talk about, because that's where we as companies have the most experience and expertise. Then we have kind of divided the way to build this trust in the user up into three really, really key elements. We have what we call the marketplace trust trifecta, and it's basically just three elements that together ensures that you have this trust. And as I said before, trust is super complex, so there's probably some things that we have not included here, and feel free to throw that in as a question as well if you feel that there's something like we have missed out. But we really believe that three key elements: safe transactions, real users, and quality content. If you address those three elements, then you have a pretty good chance of having like a trustworthy platform. And then before we go any further and dive into this, I wanted to share the results of the poll, because I think this is a good place to do that. So this was actually, Tom, I don't know if you want to join me in commenting on this, but I actually found this really, really funny, but at the same time also quite obvious, I guess, because each of these areas obviously kind of interact and complement each other, right?
Yeah, I thought maybe with a bigger sample size that retention would be the big one, because people just won't come back if you miss them that first time. But as you say, conversion and acquisition both play in that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I actually was thinking that acquisition might have been the biggest one, because you have to win that initial customer. And if you have won that initial customer, then hopefully the trust that you've already sought into the acquisition phase is something that you have carried on through the rest of your design philosophy and the user journey. But I'm actually not too surprised about this, because we talked about just before the webinar, Tom and I, that all of these kind of, they go hand in hand, right?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, so if you guys have any questions, as I said before, throw them in the question at the right. Now I'm gonna let Tom talk a little bit so I can rest my voice. I have a little bit of a sore throat, and he will talk about safe transactions.
Okay. So are we moving on to another slide after this one, just so I can check? Sorry, this isn't very. There we go. Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. A fantastic introduction. So we're going to be going sort of backwards and forwards around what a payment provider and what being transactional can do for trust in your marketplace. But right here, just looking at what happens within a payment, and traditionally I guess you go to an online store, and one of the difficulties is it's not the same as a real world store where you have confidence, you know where that store is, you know where you can go and find them. You can go and pick up and play with an item and then take it home. On a marketplace, it's very worrying, especially for the first time. You send somebody some money that you don't know them, usually by credit card, and then you sit there and wait, and you hope that the money's going to come. And all too often, the marketplace or the classified site has no real part in that transaction other than providing a search facility and a discovery facility. So we at ShieldPay thought about ways to make this better, and there are other complementary tools that do parts of this, and I think elements of this should be on the top of all of your minds. But the really basic ones, as everybody knows, is looking at a decent anti-fraud tool for cards, and most payment companies do this. That includes things like a database of known rogue users and fraudsters, and also a scoring system to make sure that things like the time of day or the volume of transactions that person's making can flag up and say, hey, we don't want to process this transaction for you. But one of the big things that we think is very important is making sure that the money for the transaction is visible to both parties at all times, and it's held away from your marketplace by a trusted third-party provider. And that means that when somebody's ready to ship an item, or when somebody's ready to meet up and exchange an item, that money's sitting there and both users can see it. Neither of them can get to it until both of those people have said that they're happy, and then that money is immediately released to the seller. If they're not happy, it's immediately released back to the buyer. But the important thing is that it's very transparent and you can see it at all times. And we work with traditional retail marketplaces selling secondhand goods, new goods, manufactured furniture, and this is really important in all of those use cases. And importantly, we've gone live in the past couple of weeks with contracting platforms where people are wanting to get paid for project work. Especially when you're being paid from overseas for that project work on a marketplace, it's very important that you have this transparency and you can see that money, and that you feel confident you're going to get paid, and that the person starting the project with you feels like they have some control over the process as well, in case your work isn't up to standard or if you just disappear. So having that money transparent and linked to the execution of a transaction or the receipt of some goods is really important. But then you need, as a marketplace, need to keep your customers informed all the way, and we do part of that for you. We will send out emails and push notifications and text messages and let people know every step of the way where the money is and what's happening, what the other person's doing, have they shipped the item. But as a marketplace, keeping customers informed and having somewhere where they can go and understand all these processes is really, really important. And I have left websites many times because I can't find out the legal company name. There's no phone number published. And that's before you even go and look at finding out what's happening with the transaction. Who can I contact? What are my rights? So you don't need to be overbearing with it, but just give them the headlines and signpost them to the right place. And then while they're going through the transaction, provide a decent level of customer service. Companies like ShieldPay provide that, an element of that for you, but we'll tailor that and allow the platform to manage it themselves, of course, or we'll take on the whole thing. And then finally, after the transaction has gone well, hopefully, there is no problem. But if there is a problem, we need to manage that really well. We need to do it by mediating between the buyer and the seller, and hopefully they can come to an agreement on their own, return the goods and receive a refund. If it does go too far, you need to provide that last level, which is a full dispute resolution, and then offering them, if they need to, an arbitration service at the end, so they don't have to go to physically go to a court. Finally, just on the payment piece, it's not exactly linked to payment, but sites that don't offer a fulfillment or a delivery service, that's a real breakdown in trust right there. Because if you're offering a payment service but no delivery or tracking service, your customers are kind of left on their own, wondering where their item is, and they don't have any legal recourse to go back and say, hey, I shipped this, here's the evidence. So adding that in not only provides a really great service to them, makes them feel like they've got the whole end-to-end process on your site. And we've got evidence saying that, I'll probably quote this a little bit badly, but it's something like 75% of people quoted in a recent Ipsos poll said that they wouldn't stay on an e-commerce site that didn't provide shipping and payments, as well as the discovery of the item. And then, of course, very, very last thing is aftercare. Follow up, find out what went well and what didn't go so well with your customers as well. That makes them think that you're looking after them. That gives them great trust. It's an emotional experience buying on your sites, and I think we forget that sometimes. So just not necessarily holding people's hands throughout the whole thing, but just providing them with that reassurance, and then that little bit of aftercare to say that I'm gonna improve on my service based on your feedback.
And this is actually a little bit interesting, because I started out by saying that we're going to focus on the interpersonal relationship and the trust in the user, but as I also said, they kind of interlink, right? You know, when you're building trust in the user and helping users build trust between each other, you're also kind of building more trust in your own platform automatically, right? So it's hard to kind of really split it. But I completely agree with, you know, keep your customers informed of every step, not just of what's happening, but also, you know, all of the measures that you take to keep them safe. This is something that we see a lot, that people, like, for instance, are kind of afraid to say that they are moderating the content of the users. This is something you should be proud of, right? You're providing that extra kind of layer of protection. Why are you not putting that on your front page? Maybe not your front page, but at least, you know, saying it's kind of like verified by X, Y, and Z, and it just gives them that extra little level of trust. And the same with you guys, with your payment systems powered by ShieldPay or whatever. You like put that out there so they know that there's some security measures behind all of this.
Yeah, I think so. And look, and if you have a great experience and great content, then they're your net promoters, and those are the people that are going to give other people the confidence to shop. So these are the people spreading trust. Yeah. These are the guys you've got to make happy.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you were completely done, but if you were, yes. I'll just skip to the next slide, where we're going to talk about quality content, which is obviously something I'm super passionate about. And it's funny, often when we talk about quality content with people think that this is about user experience, it's about conversions, about all of that. But it is, of course it is, but it's mainly about building trust, right? If you come to a website where everything looks horrible and homemade and like one of those horrible 90s websites, then you're not going to feel comfortable putting in your payment details. You're not going to feel comfortable communicating with anyone through that site. And that's why quality content is super, super important to trust building. So one of the things that we have found when we do a lot of surveys and research with the end users, just to kind of give some proof points to what we're saying. And one of the things that we found is that we talked to a lot of people and let them look at different types of ads, and we asked them to pick the ones that they would trust the most and the one they would trust the least. And one of the things that we saw was that when you compare how much they trust each of these, when we had really, really bad descriptions or not a good headline or a bad photo, compared to an ad with a proper headline, with a proper description that actually talked about what the condition of the item was, etc., and a proper image that wasn't a stock photo, you could raise the trust that they had in that particular listing with 17%, which is quite a lot. So especially because we have other stats showing that you convert more if you actually trust it. So and the reason for this we have found is that as you move away from real physical stores where you can go in and you can touch the item and you can smell the item and you can, you know, talk to the other person, it becomes increasingly important that you understand what the item that you're buying is. Even if there's an issue with it, it's better that the description says, oh, there's some paint dots on the top of it, or oh, there's a little bit of a breakage on the side, because at least people know what they are buying and what they are receiving. And this is why it's super, super important for you guys also to make sure that the headlines you put out there and the descriptions and the images are correct. Another interesting piece of stats that we have found, we did a small mystery shopping survey and we were going through, I think it was 4 different big websites, And we found on the first page of search results of Gucci bags, we found that 43% of those were actually fake. And I don't know if you can imagine what that's going to do to the trust levels of the people who actually purchase this, or even the people who just come in there and have a little bit of knowledge about luxury goods. And they go in and they look at this and they see, wow, this site is almost half of the stock that they have, almost half of the inventory within Gucci bags is not the real deal. That's not really building trust. Then we also looked at something. We asked people to decide between 3 different sites, and we asked them to find the same item there, and then we asked them to pick one of them as the one that they would prefer over the others. And we asked them then to tell us why. And in 100% of the cases, they mentioned good quality images as a reason for it. And this is a quote from one of them saying that pictures show that it actually belongs to a real person. And some of the sites had stock image photos that they would discard because, you know, it doesn't really, it might be a nice looking photo, but it doesn't show the actual item. Again, going back to the fact that you want to understand what actual item am I getting. So really, really important as well to make sure that you handle this and you don't have too many stock photos on your site. Then finally, for quality content, we again did a survey and we saw that 50% of people who see a scam on your site are unlikely to return. And if we're talking about, you guys said that you have a problem, 33% of you had problem with retention. If they come into your site and they see scams, there's a really, really good likelihood that you're not going to see that person again. So that's something as well to take care of. And we have looked at our numbers, and 2% of all of the content that is submitted that we go through on a monthly basis is actually scams. So if you're not having anything in place to take care of that, then you're in for a world of trouble. But I'm sure you guys already have something in place at least. Let's move on to real users, and I'll give the word back to Tom as well, because he had something quite interesting to tell about this that we talked about earlier.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and just following on from the Gucci handbag piece as well, it's quite interesting. We've just started a piece of work with a very large global marketplace. We don't know where that'll end, but looking at authenticating items like this, and we're seeing a 70% increase in sales when an item has been authenticated, and that's incredible because it's actually about a 3 to 5 day extra time on your item being sold for it to be shipped, authenticated, sent back, and delivered. But people are prepared to wait to get that kind of good feeling.
And some extra cost, I would assume as well, right?
Yeah.
So people are willing to pay for trust, basically.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, definitely. And we've actually I'm just about to talk about our real users and how we do that. And the research that we've done, we were a little worried that by putting people through more checks, or certainly deeper checks than other payment companies do, that they would be put off or afraid. And we had pretty much 100% of our respondents said that they preferred it because they knew that the other people on the platform were going through the same thing, which surprised me. I thought they were going to hate it, but they didn't. So that was good news. So what does Shilpay do? And again, when I'm saying this, you can do this yourself. There are plenty of background check companies, and I'm sure a lot of you use them. And we use different variations of this depending on what type of company or what type of platform we're integrating to. But the reasons people don't make purchases online are generally a fear of identity theft, it's credit card fraud, it's the fact that they can't view the items, or there's not enough decent content and imagery around the item for them to be able to avoid making returns. They're afraid that their personal information is going to be sold to other merchants, GDPR, and then other reasons like shipping and things like that. So what we do is we onboard customers very, very quickly, and around the world we use different methods. So in Scandinavia we use Bank ID, which is very fast. In the UK it's all automated and online. It changes from country to country, but as a very minimum, we make sure that somebody says they are who they say they are, that they live at their address, that they own their bank account, that they own the cards that they're going to pay. And we go a little bit further as standard as well, and we check that they're not on any fraud lists around the world, or sanctions lists, or terrorism lists, watch lists. And then we also do an adverse media check as well, and that's really important. And if you think about it in the case of a marketplace providing services to landlords and tenants, you get a lot of rogue landlords on sites like Gumtree and Craigslist, and they show up either by that person's email address or by their name and other identity. And then also just on general retail sites as well, we can block out a lot of scammers during that process. And it's not entirely about the technology and the level of background checks that we do, but there's a psychological element as well. So once this has happened and they're part of this trusted network, be it on your platform or directly with us, we've seen that they start to behave better. And they start to behave better as well when the whole process is transparent. So we work with platforms as well. I know a lot of classified marketplaces in Eastern Europe in particular, but also here in the UK, have got problems with organized crime. So there are certain things that we can do there to work with platforms with some very clever bits of technology to try and weed those people out as well. But ultimately, with all those checks in place, you'd have to be a very committed criminal to try and get on board with a system like ours. And you can build this in. You can use products like Onfido yourselves to background check your customers. And a lot of sites that we work with do that for themselves. But if you select a third-party partner, the truth is that they'll pay for it for you, so you don't have to, and you may get some other benefits as well. But yeah, as I say, all of our results so far on different marketplaces and directly with us show that those upfront checks, guaranteeing as close to guaranteeing as you can that a user is who they say they are, has benefits across the whole of your business, from trust and security to how people interact, and how they choose to behave on your platform.
Yeah, and I mean, this is something we see a lot, and you're saying this about a trusted network of users, and I think the reason that is really effective is because first-time users are often the ones who commit the crime, right? Regardless of whether it's a financial crime or if they are trying to scam, which is of course also a financial scam or a crime in the end, or if they are just being offensive, it's often the first-time users who do that, and we see that quite a lot. What you can do from a content piece, and what we say to our clients is make sure that you are extra careful with the content submitted by the first-time users, right? Because if you just make sure that we should always monitor all your content, but if you have to focus somewhere, that's where you should focus. And I think that's kind of the same. You're saying that, make sure that you do a check the first time they enter the payment system, a background check, etc., right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we do that, on behalf of the marketplaces as well. It's once somebody's signed up with us, their email address they can use that across the internet directly with us on any site that accepts us, and that's really powerful, because you're then moving your trusted self from site to site as well, and they're interacting with other people. They're telling them about your marketplace as well, because they know it was a safe place to trade. So again, those net promoters feeling comfortable, having a great experience, move around and build your trust score for you.
Cool. So we have to move on because I can see we're running out of time. Let's just have a quick look at this, because we wanted to make sure that you guys had something you could think about when you come out of this webinar, and some things, like, try to cut it down into 3 areas where you can start implementing things. So the first one is about implementing security measures because a lot of the problem with trust is also a perceived risk, right? There might not be any risk there might only be good people on your marketplace, but people will still be worried. So make sure that you put some things in place that can kind of cut down on that perceived list. And I was kind of touching upon it before by saying, make sure that you advertise the security measures you have in place. Make sure that you say that you're using ShieldPay. Make sure that you say that you're doing content moderation. Make sure that you say all of these things, that people know that there are someone actually monitoring and making sure that there's no bad players coming through. And then I guess, as well, something that you would probably agree with, Tom, is, let people transact and communicate through the site rather than off the site. you don't have your microphone on, but you I can tell you to everyone that you agree with me, right?
Yeah, I really do agree. We toyed with the idea of bringing in our own messaging system, but we really encourage it where sites don't have it. It's very bad because you've got no audit trail. There's nowhere to go back. It doesn't feel like a community either. So as you started off this section by saying, you need to build that community, put in these security measures, but those security measures they don't have to be really draconian. They can be nice things, and messaging and chat is a great way to do that.
Yeah. And also, I mean, from our point of view, the good thing about a chat on the site is that can be moderated, which means it's easy to report if there's someone doing something wrong, if they're being mean to you, but also if they're doing scams. And as you say, it's a trail of what has happened. And the other thing, of course, is improve the quality of your inventory. And I think one of the things we have done with one of our customers in the past is that we have ranked or labeled their images so that we would label them high quality, medium quality, and low quality, and that way the site could actually push all the high quality pictures to the front, which means that when first time users, we were talking about acquisition before and how to build trust in the acquisition, when first time users come to your site, they are met by really, really high quality pictures, and that's something I think worked really well for the client we work with, and something I can recommend to others who are considering, okay, so how can I make sure that people trust my site just on the surface when they come in? I don't know if you have something to add here, Tom?
Yeah, really quickly. I mean, just everything you've said about content is absolutely true, and we bring content from our marketplace partners into the transaction as well. So where we're powering the messaging around that in our app or in our email on behalf of the marketplace, we bring in the details of that transaction, and then let me tell you, when it's not good content, it makes the payment look very dodgy. So good content is very good, and then that makes everybody feel much better.
Yeah. And then the final point, just because we are running out of time and we have some questions that I want to get to, so we will get to your questions, those of you who asked them. If anyone else has some, you can ask them now. If we don't get to them, we will answer them after the webinar and send out. So the last one is about facilitating and encouraging a detailed user profile. And I think here it's really important to make sure that you enable people to add profiles, social proof, even like a description, so people have this feeling that there's a real person. Like, this is a way to build a persona on the marketplace, right? And you're talking about a trusted network, but just to make sure that people don't feel it's just a random digital ghost, but it's someone who actually, there's someone on the other side. And one of the things that we do for customers is that we help review those profiles, making sure that they are actually, like, one example would be, okay, so this guy says he's in the UK, but the IP of when he signed up is from a country that is prone to scam. That doesn't match. Okay, so this guy might not be genuine, right?
Yeah, and I agree. We've had in our platform for quite some time, and we're just bringing it out to the front now. Is ratings and profiles, which are peer reviewed. So you guys running your marketplaces, you want customers to review all of your inventory. You want them to review the items that were bought, but you don't really review the transaction and the individual behind it. So it's very important that after every sale, every user has the opportunity to give each other a rating, and therefore you can choose who to buy and sell from.
Cool. Let's just move on quickly. I just wanted to give a quick moment to just say we have, both of us have tools that can help with these challenges. I'm not going to spend a lot of time to that. This is not supposed to be a product demo, but just quickly, if you need help with content moderation, automation, AI, anything like that, Implio can do that, both in terms of building trust, giving you better quality inventory, etc. And Tom, take 30 seconds to just say why they should use ShieldPay, and then we'll get on to the questions.
If you'd like to kill fraud, increase trust, make some more money and delight your customers, you could use ShieldPay.
Okay, so let's start with this question, because I think Tom will be very happy to answer that. It's from Yelena. She says, "Hi Tom, we're interested in using ShieldPay, but it seems not to be available in Switzerland. Could you please confirm this?"
Let's chat. I think we can probably help you. Yes, we're available all across Europe. So anybody who's in the European Economic Area, we can help you.
Okay, and here's another one. And again, you know, if anyone else still has some questions, put them in the questions, because we will either get to them or send answers out to you. So here's another one. How do you build enough trust to convert first-time sellers? I think that's an interesting question, and I think we touched upon that a little bit, at least, in that. Well, actually, what I said was, you know, make sure that you have nice pictures, and that might have sounded more like it was for buyers, but it goes for sellers as well. One thing that we have found is that if people come to a site and they see bad quality content, then they are not going to want to be a seller either, because bad quality content will affect both their kind of ability to convert and get people to buy their content, but also just the trust that they have in the site. You know, if it's full with fake Gucci bags, do you really want your real Gucci bag to be lumped in there? Probably not, right? So I think that's one step you can take, is to make sure that you have a really high quality inventory. What do you think, Tom? Do you have anything to add?
Not to that. I think you answered it perfectly. The only thing on my mind is that Switzerland is not in the European Economic Area; it's in the single market.
And then I think we'll take this final one, and then we'll close, because now we're 10 minutes over time. How does a payment method like ShieldPay build more trust than something like PayPal?
That's a great question, and one we get asked all the time. So PayPal does a great job, and it has a fantastic history. But the difference with ShieldPay is that we do these deep background checks on our users up front. We allow you to spend an unlimited amount of money for an unlimited amount of time. So that works for manufactured items, projects, anything like that. And you have to have this double handshake. Two people have to say yes before we release the money. And that could be a delivery company. It could be two people meeting up on the street. But those are the core things. And there's a lot more besides. So if you want to talk more, give me a call.
And I think that's generally the next slide. So we obviously really want to talk about our tools. We both feel that we have something that is really valuable to the marketplace, and that can be super helpful, as we said, not just the full solution to solve trust, but a key component at least. So if you want to get in touch and talk to us about how we can help you with that, here's our contact details. Another thing that I forgot to say at the beginning is that after this webinar, we're going to send out a checklist that will, I think actually I mentioned that probably, that will touch a little bit upon both how you can build trust for users, but also the platform and in the idea. So we will send that out right after this webinar, I think. And the other thing is that we have recorded this. We're gonna send that recording out at some point next week. And finally, ShieldPay, and maybe you want to talk about this for a second, Tom. You have done a fraud report.
Yeah, we've launched a what's going to be a quarterly. We don't know what it's going to be called yet. A trust index or a fraud report, where we just need to go out and interview a few thousand people, and we're going to provide you guys with an early access first edition of that report, which has some very interesting numbers in it.
I'm looking forward to it. Am I getting it as well?
No, maybe.
Yeah, but anyways, thank you so much for participating. If you have any questions that you come up with afterwards, let me know. And as I said, there was a couple of questions we didn't get to. We're going to answer them, and we will inform you when those are answered as well, send that out to you. And I guess that's it. Thank you so much for participating. And Tom, thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you. Thank everybody. Thank you.
Bye.